In the world is in Zurich, or used to be. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the M1 MWPA Community Oversight Committee for Wednesday, January 22nd, 2024, opening at 3 p.m. So first off, we'd like to start with a roll call.
Certainly. Starting with Pat Randolph.
Here.
Rebecca Suggs.
Here.
Larry Minikis.
Here.
Jennifer Howard is actually
no longer on the committee.
No longer on the committee. Do we have Jim Wagner?
Unavailable today.
Theo Hellman?
I don't know if he knew we had a meeting. I tried to reach him, but he didn't respond back to my email.
Got it. Vice Chair Jenny Biggs?
Here.
And Chair John McCauley?
I'm here.
Chair, we do have a quorum, so we can proceed.
Okay, first item on the agenda is agenda adjustments. Does anyone want to change anything on the agenda? Shaking heads. Okay, next item 4, open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the Citizens Oversight Committee. That's what we are, right? No, the Community Oversight Committee. At this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee, please be advised that pursuant to the Government Code section, sound orderly, 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take any actions on matters not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 2 minutes and should be respectful to the community and silence your phones during the meeting. So are there any public comments?
We have no hands for comment at this time.
Okay, before I forget, I did notice that the webpage described this as I always got the pause on this, so we're now with the Community Oversight Committee, and it did say citizens on the webpage.
Okay, I will.
Probably under the agendas, we need to change the master template on the agenda.
Exactly, a small thing. But
thank you. Thank you for catching that.
I'm still trying to remember what the right term is. Okay, so next up is Executive Officers Oral Report.
So I won't be nearly as long as I was before, but we're getting just, as Martina mentioned, our website, our videos, our everything is being hit pretty hard, but all in a positive way. People are wanting to learn, and some of the key messages that we really want to push out is that no one should have been surprised by these fires. And it's time to stop being surprised by these fires. Surprise leads to panic, panic leads to bad decisions. And then we want to really avoid the view of us being Monday morning quarterbacks. And so the messaging that we're pushing out is all the positive content, positive messaging of what, yes, we know this happens. This is what we as Marin Wildfire and our member agencies are doing. And this is what we need our public to do. We have pushed out a list of key speaking points to all of our member agencies so that we can have consistent speaking points to all of our members of the public. We didn't tell them exactly what to say. We just said, this is the content. We want each of our member agencies to put it in their voice. And then, as you guys probably saw, we had a Marin IJ article that Adrian Rodriguez wrote. I thought he did a good job. Mm-hmm. And then myself and Dan Mahoney co-authored a Marin Voice. We tried to have Firewise communities get mentioned in our article that Adrian wrote, but unfortunately it hit the cutting room floor. Mm-hmm. And then tomorrow we're going to be, myself, Dave Shue, and Michael Wara will be in a panel discussion with Stanford for an hour-long panel discussion. And as of 2 days ago, they had 400 people signed up. Mm-hmm.
Can we see it on Zoom?
It's on Zoom. If you go into our, I believe we pushed it out on Fire Safe Marin social media. So if you go to Fire Safe Marin social media, you'll be able to find a link to register. It's also going to be recorded.
Okay, good.
And so we're just trying to push out that positive messaging. Well, one of the things I did though is that I pulled up the 2017 lessons learned document, because that really is our anchor point. And I went through the 6 pages of action items and did an informal review of the action items, and well over 75% of the action items we are well engaged. None of the action items should we ever consider completely done. These are forever type things, but I'm pretty happy with the 75% at least of things that we're well engaged in. Some of them we've pivoted away from, just because we've learned more about the wildfire environment, and some of those ideas weren't necessarily good ideas. And then some of them are completely out of our control. Like one of the action items is improving reimbursement for law enforcement in mutual aid. We have no control over that. So I'm real pleased with that. And so I'll just leave it there. And I see that Theo Hellman joined online, so I'm going to bring him over as a panelist. Okay. And we can welcome him to the committee as our new committee member.
Right.
Hi Theo, welcome to the Community Oversight Committee.
Hey there. How's it going?
Good. And we're just, I don't know if you were tracking or if you have an agenda with you, but we're just wrapping up the executive officers report. And welcome to the committee. And then one of the things we'll do is we'll get you an onboarding partner and get you an onboarding packet. Out of your next meeting, we'll get a full introduction of you then.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
is it going to be on video? Or is it just the words there?
If you have a camera, go ahead and turn it on, Theo, if you don't mind. There you go. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Theo. How are you? Okay. Okay, so is that it? Does that close
That's it.
your?
Any questions?
I had a question and then it floated. Oh, I know. What time is that? The
Tomorrow,
thing tomorrow? 12:30. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll ask you. The use fire that just broke out today at Castaic Lake, it's like 5,000 acres now. Do you have any insight on
I
this?
haven't had, I've been so busy today.
Yeah.
I was, where was I? I was at the Woodacre Fire Station. I saw it pop up on the news. Other than that, I haven't had a
it's
chance to dig into it.
Another real fast growing one,
Yeah.
apparently.
Mark,
Oh,
I
one other
can
comment.
tell you, there were like 18 aerial assets on that thing about an hour ago.
And I
Planes,
know that
helicopters.
they had a significant fleet of fire engines and resources pre-staged down there.
Right, right. Yeah, they've been saying that they've been pre-staging for these wind events now.
Well,
They were pre-staged before the Palisades fire, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, that was it's the size of it, the enormity, and no matter how many engines we had there, at 100 miles per hour, you've got a firestorm, you've got a hurricane.
interesting enough, just to get a sense for how wide these things are leaking out, my sister in the East Bay sent me a text over the weekend. This is something important to know about how to prepare your house for an evacuation if you have a couple hours. And what was it? The MWPA video. So yeah, I know something about that.
Something that made me smile or be real happy is that on YouTube, somebody from the Santa Monica Mountains posted that someone had sent that video to them before the fires, and they're glad they watched it before the fires happened. So that was kind of nice to hear.
The North Bay has been getting a lot of positive press in the news that we're sending folks down. I've seen it numerous times now on different channels, which is nice. I haven't heard much about them talking about the MW, about what we're doing here, but they're talking about what communities in the Bay Area are doing in general. Yeah.
Okay, if that's the end of the executive officer's report, I move on to the consent calendar. The only consent calendar item are the minutes from December 4th. Does anyone want to make any edits or have any comments with regards to the minutes?
Do you want a motion to approve?
I would love a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. All right.
I'll do this
Just
next
to
time.
prove to you that
I'll
I'm
push you a
awake.
little.
Gotta show you my hand signals. Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote on that.
Perfect. Starting with Theo Hellman.
But he doesn't vote.
Right.
Sorry, Theo.
Apologies, sir. For Pat Randolph.
Yes,
Rebecca,
whatever I'm supposed to say.
Rebecca Suggs.
Yes.
Larry Menninger.
Yes.
Jenny Biggs.
Aye.
John McCauley.
I'll be aye also.
So we've got, the motion passes and we have one abstention.
The high school students non-voting position.
Oh, non-voting. Sorry, motion passes by unanimous vote of all in
There you go. Okay.
attendance.
Okay, next item is the first action item, Community Oversight Committee bylaws. As you know, we had all made comments on the bylaws and staff have edited them and we received it back in a change, mode.
Changes, yeah.
Track changes mode. So let's do a quick, I have one comment I want to make. How many people have comments they want to make? Does anyone else raise your hand if you have any comments? Seeing none. Okay, so this is going to move along quickly. My comment's fairly small. If you go to Article 2 in the last, I guess it's the penultimate sentence. It says, as specified in Section 8 of the JPA agreement, after reviewing Marin Wildfire's previous year's work program and financial audit, the committee shall write and adopt a report to provide feedback to the Marin Wildfire Board of Directors. So that sequences us, so we can't issue our report until after the financial audit's been issued, the audit, right? Mm-hmm. And I would like to make an amendment in that, I'll just read it to you, and I'll try to read it slow so you can, because you won't be able to read my handwriting. The committee can submit its report in advance of the financial audit, subject to revision if the financial audit results in material adjustments to financial data.
Oh, that's very good.
Okay, so in other words, we don't have to wait for the auditor.
Yeah.
If the auditor's pokey, we can just issue a report because, 99 out of 100 times that should do it. But then if the auditor comes back with a significant change, then we have to readdress our report.
Yeah. That sounds
But
good.
isn't that a change to the JPA wording?
I don't know whether it was in the, I haven't read section 8 of the
believe that's-
GPA.
I believe that's a change to the JPA wording that we
Oh,
can't make.
I'm pulling it up now.
yeah, I can pull it up too.
You can never raise. What's Article 8 say?
Hey, Theo, every so often a committee like ours, a public committee like ours does housekeeping. So what you're seeing now is really housekeeping, where you look at the bylaws that we originally developed when we formed this committee, go back to see how things have unfolded, where we can do better, where we can clarify things. And that's what you're witnessing here. This is not typical of each meeting, but this is what we're doing in this meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand.
It does say after review of the previous year work program and the financial audit, the committee will adopt a report describing the extent to which the funds have been spent consistent. So that we should have caught that when we did the
We should have caught that.
when we did the changes in the JPA revisions.
Right.
But since we've been doing it this way already, and it doesn't make sense to wait for the audit, I think if our bylaws were slightly different and we followed that, I don't think we have an issue.
Good.
So you would propose that we went ahead and make this change in here, and then next time you catch up your bylaws, you can.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
And I do have a question.
Mhm.
I'm fully in favor of that, but as we have been functioning, the vice chair automatically becomes the chair. I'm wondering, I was thinking about this, that moving to having year-long chair, I would be more in favor of chair, co-chair, and changing after a year, because we're locking ourselves into 2 years as it is now, because we're electing a president and vice president. And that means 2 years down the road, we're,
For whatever it's worth, at least in my experience at city council level, when you have, a mayor and vice mayor, that vice mayor does not automatically become mayor until the subsequent year and there's an election.
and
So-
that's what I'm proposing is
I
that,
think that's naturally how, sorry to interrupt you, it's naturally how it works. I don't think you have to change anything for the then current board to make a decision to not go with whoever the vice chair is, for instance, if they depart.
right, and I want to just make sure that we're clear on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That the vice chair does not necessarily
Right.
become the chair.
That's my understanding of how it normally works.
And that's the way, that's my read on this as well.
Okay,
And we deleted that, the vice chair shall succeed, so we deleted that.
There we go. We're covered.
All right.
good.
Say, any other comments on this item? So I guess you should make a vote to accept the one edit that I proposed.
I move to approve your edit as you read it to
Okay.
us, as you presented it.
Could we let one of the people on the screen be the
I'll
second
second.
this time?
I can second.
Thank you.
Okay,
And that's a motion by Larry, second by Jenny.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, starting with Rebecca Suggs,
Yes.
Pat Randolph,
Aye.
Larry Minnicus.
Aye.
Jenny Biggs,
Aye.
John McCauley.
yes.
Motion passes unanimous vote.
Great. Okay, next up is board monitoring committees, board directors. Okay, we can catch that up next time. Executive committee?
There actually was not an executive committee meeting.
Okay, operations committee, was there an ops committee meeting?
There was.
Okay. Who was?
And isn't there one tomorrow too?
There is.
There is.
So
And
who was supposed to cover the last ops committee?
I think that was me.
All right.
And I'm looking for my notes. Pat, you should look for my notes when you look for yours. As I recall, it was mostly, we're getting ready to do everything at the next meeting. There was, though, some discussion that Bill Tyler brought up that might have been important for us to remember. And if I could only find my notes. If we have another one who's like, if somebody else, do we have another meeting to talk about?
That's it?
Oh, good, sure.
Well, Rebecca, one of the things that Chief Tyler did bring up is if, and it was good timing considering the topics of conversation post LA fires, is if this is a good opportunity for Marin Wildfire to help its member agencies move Zone 0 ordinances forward. And so that was one of the things that he had mentioned, and I can let you know that Marin County Fire Chiefs Association was on board with each of their agencies creating Zone 0 ordinances. And when I brought that up with our board of directors, the board of directors are very supportive of Zone 0 ordinances across the county. Does that sound like what you were going to bring up, Rebecca?
No, but that was really good.
I can tell you that Mill Valley tried that when I was on council, and it created one of the most dramatic meetings I was efficient at over the 9 years I was on council. So
We're hoping that appetites changed.
I'm hoping that would be true, right? Exactly, but don't necessarily count on it. So.
And then the other topic that Chief Tyler brought up was whether or not there should be a 20% holdback for priority funding.
That was it. Yes, that was it.
20% holdback for.
Since every zone, since we're required that every zone spend 80%,
At least
80%.
Right.
We've been holding back a 20% priority fund so that we can flex our resources where they're needed most. And so for the most part, it's ended up going right back to the zone, but we've been holding back that 20% so that if there was a high priority project that in that zone doesn't necessarily have that revenue to complete that project. The West Marin planning project is an example. We used 200,000 out of that priority funding to put 200,000 extra into West Marin in order to complete that planning. So that's one of the things the ops committee is going to have to work on is are we going to continue with that 80%? Tell each of the zones to target at 80% and then compete by saying, hey, this is how important this project is for the remaining priority funding.
And I think what Chief Tyler was saying is he would support everybody keeping their 100%. And then if a priority project surfaces, have the discussion of should we take out the 20% instead of making it an automatic take out first and then discuss.
Yep.
For whatever it's worth, I actually was the party who suggested this when the measure was still under development, and you're at the opposite ends. One end is don't give the extra 20%. The other end is give the extra 20%. I would suggest that you pay people up to the 80% perspective, and to the extent that they need money between 80 and 100, they go ahead and to get it, right? I mean,
And then that's what, and that's
but I
what we,
wouldn't give them the full 100. If you need 90 and you think that's reasonable for your district, then you should get it.
and that's kind of the track we have been going, because I felt that that was the spirit of that.
Right.
So,
Well, it's for others to decide. We're
Yeah.
just an
Yeah.
oversight on it, but that's interesting. Okay, so that, are we done with that section?
And what was the date on that meeting, Mark? Do you,
so tomorrow is the next meeting.
no, I mean the last one?
It was December 14th.
That's why it's a different.
We haven't met since then.
But we covered that.
Yep.
And then we did have a board meeting.
We had a board meeting, but I forgot my notes on the board meeting at home. If you
Oh.
have notes and you would like to report on the board meeting, you may.
My notes for the board meeting, I do have them, but they are quite short. The biggest thing I wrote notes about was Mark's report about where the COC was with its getting new members in. And then the only other thing I even wrote notes about was Ember Stomp is going to be Saturday, September 6th, and that the next ops meeting is tomorrow.
And I mean, I'll add on, we had some administrative stuff as far as moving money from one project to another that was in there. We extended a couple of contracts so to keep some project going. And unfortunately, we have failed in recruiting a community-based organization. We have not gotten a Firewise member. We're still doing targeted outreach to recruit. And then we also will need a taxpayer representative. So that's why we're a committee of 6 right now, rather than a committee of 9. And that's why the quorum is 4. And you guys can continue to do your business as you have been tonight. And then we also created an ad hoc subcommittee to go over Marin Wildfire's bylaws. We have our JPA and then we have our bylaws. It's time for us to update our bylaws.
So did we have a discussion, or did we all get notified that we did have another resignation?
Good point. So my bad on that. I did announce this during the board meeting that we had a resignation. Kingston Cole decided it was life balance time for him to step down.
So it just that the reason I was making notes is, are we running as a committee of 6, which you just clarified, or are we running as a committee of 9 and going to struggle to keep a quorum? But
I doubled when all this was going down. I had a conversation with our council, and our council advised if you have vacant seats, then you're no longer a committee of 9. You are a committee of 6.
Right.
So we're in good order.
great. I mean, not great, but yes, thank you.
Yeah. We knew what you meant.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion on notes and dates and stuff. And thank you, Mark, for being on top of all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that brings us up to our annual report committees, and it's really, I think, wonderful that 2 of the 3 are actually in a draft form, and it's only January, because I believe it was like much later in the year.
You guys are trucking along.
I would like to see them in draft form in November.
Yeah, let's
To
just,
me, that would be ideal.
sure, I agree, and we can try to work on that in the
Yeah.
next second. Okay, so the first one is local, and so Rebecca, thank you very much for hustling to get that thing out. I have a couple of comments. How many people have comments?
Well, I have,
Would it be helpful if I did a screen share?
We can do it by page, depending on how many comments there are.
yeah,
Do you guys, if you guys have it in front of you, I won't do a screen share. But if you don't have it in front of you, I can do a screen share.
I've got a copy of it. Do we want a screen share?
I would love a screen share. I can pull it up otherwise, but screen share makes it easy.
Coming up.
Okay. And to the extent that there are cosmetic comments that are more, wording, especially this is a first draft, I believe that the way we can deal with that in order to expedite this discussion is to forward them directly to Mark, and then he can push them back out at our next subsequent meeting for our consideration and therefore stay inside of the Brown Act, okay?
And
Okay.
I will preface this with, we had agreed at a meeting previously that we would follow the format that you guys did for last year's report for the local section. So I just took last year's report and made a template out of it and essentially filled it in. So you will see that it does follow this exact same format as we had for last year for the local section, and that the changes are the content, what was different. Like, for example, which 5 agencies did we pick to hone in on? And then, of course, the numbers and actual content particulars, but everything else was the format.
Well, that format last year was just awesome, whoever did that.
Oh, man, amazing.
Okay, that's a little joke.
Yeah.
Yes, we know.
All right. Okay, I have a comment on page 1, if I may.
Sure.
So under that first bullet, the attestations, I just want to have some clarification on it. Did the attestation with regards to the restricted funds, or what we call the rollover, were those attestations specific to dollar amount, or was it just they're going to be restricted for future expenditures?
There were, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yes, they were dollar amounts. It's a little, 98% of them. It was a little spreadsheet within the spreadsheet that actually had, here are the dollars and here's what's being rolled over.
Good, so that's powerful, because what that says is that the MWPA books and the local jurisdiction books are in sync with each other. So I'm not going to write an edit, but I think it'd be important to clarify it. It's not just like, hey, the restricted money will be being restricted. It's the restricted amount of $147,250 or whatever it is restricted. So that, I think, is a more powerful way to describe that. And I was hoping that was what you were going to say. So that's good.
Let me clarify with Mark that, Mark, that was my understanding of what those little spreadsheets were saying. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, great. And so do we need to make a note, or will staff make a note, that we want them to say specifically, or do you think that the spreadsheet says that here's what we're going to restrict?
Well, John, are you saying that maybe in this bullet point we say
Yeah.
inclusive of value?
I would just say the dollar amount, just make it clear that the
Okay.
dollar amount, is, I don't want to write the words, but you want to make it clear that the amount restricted for future expenditures for, this is for local, was specified, and unless there are further comments, agrees to the books and records of MWPA. Something like that.
Okay.
Okay. And whoever wants to edit it. Any other comments on?
I will make that in my words, and then if it's okay with you, John, and with the Brown Act, that I send it back to you for you to re-edit. Is that okay?
No, since I'm not on that subcommittee, I think that's to go to Mark, and then then at the next general meeting, we can all look at it. I think that's how we.
That would be the cleanest.
Okay, great.
It's just, yeah, it's a small part. Any other comments on page 1? Okay, on to page 2.
On page 2, I have a couple of comments that are slightly beyond just wordsmithing. That very first sentence, review of individual member agencies, I would suggest that we say review of selected member agencies. Because when you say individual, I was expecting you to go through all the agencies.
I'm sorry, you on the first line of page 2?
It's the header. It's the header.
Title,
The header.
header.
Okay.
And I would also, and this is messing with English, but when you get down there to that 1, 2, 3, 4,
Right.
3 of those are sentences and one of them is a phrase. And that kind of thing drives me nuts. So you and I can work together to,
Yeah, let's agree that
yes.
it doesn't drive me nuts, but I
Yeah.
think share it and then we can move it.
But can I ask the question, I had no idea in the San Rafael chart there what small and responsive were or what targeted were. I just, that language doesn't mean anything to me.
Those are the titles.
But is that what San Rafael used?
Yeah. That was
Then we
taken
should
right out.
approach them when they use them at the beginning of next year to.
Well, that's just a
to use
project
them.
title. And then when you go into the work plan, and then you see the description of the project title.
Yeah, but they should have something slightly more descriptive right there. That's to me is laziness to not put something that's meaningful to the ordinary public.
Well, maybe we can put a live link in there so that
Yeah.
if you click on it, you can see the projects.
It's all, I don't think we should be changing it. So Pat, if you're suggesting we make the comment to San Rafael or whoever, because you're gonna see they're probably all like that. Should we be making a comment to them to say, make your titles of your projects more,
Yeah, that would work for me. I don't, I guess it would require people like me to look at them very early in the year to make sure.
Or our executive director. I mean, I think it's a small thing. I agree that it
Yeah.
should be amended. I don't think it's worthy of a comment in our COC report, but I think it's worth follow-up.
Sure.
Because I agree, small and responsive doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Targeted neighborhood community evacuation drills does mean something to me, so it's just one neighborhood, how I figured that's what that meant, but.
The way they could say it is projects under a certain amount are considered small. So projects.
Or just call it
parentheses,
small
under
project.
5,000.
Let's not figure it out.
Yeah. Let's let San Rafael figure it out.
Okay.
Let them say it in a much more meaningful way.
Okay, I have other comments on page 2. Are there other people who have comments on page 2?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so my suggestion there is that we have budget, expense, and difference, but in reality is what we totally have is we have opening carryover, right? Budget, expenses, and it's actually, let me see, it's a little confusing as I look at it. So if you go back to the table on the final page, it shows what the cumulative rollover is at the end of 23 and then the cumulative rollover at the end of 24. And it shows the revenue and the expenses. So is the budget assigned, is that equal to the 20%?
I'm not sure how they built this table.
Well, let's find out. So if we go to San Rafael, the 24 revenues are 1016 and this is 983. So it sounds like the budget is not equal to the 20, this is to the 20% of revenues. So we're getting a little confused here about, or it could become confusing to kind of compare the budget to the total revenues, and then I assume all the expenses are correct, 762, and that's actually slightly different. It's 773, right?
And part of what happens is that they set the budget when we have our estimated revenue,
Mhm.
and then the revenue has been coming in higher. And so then we send them the same, when the revenue comes in higher to us for our tax proceeds, then we send them the actual 20% of our revenue that we bring in. And so that's why the revenue here is higher than what was budgeted.
So I don't think we should figure it out today, but I might suggest that one way to do that would be to have a line at the end of the budget which picks up that difference, and I assume some of it's spent, but it should all tie together. And ultimately, the most important thing is that we end up with the rollover at the end of each period. And of course, if the expenses are different, I'm not sure why the expenses would be different, because don't they report, they say they spent 771, 459, and this shows 772, 462. So I don't know why you'd have two numbers in your records.
I don't know where that table came from.
Well, it didn't come from Rebecca, it came from somewhere. So why don't you guys figure this out offline so that we get this tightened up?
Yeah, because that's actually Rebecca, I'm not sure where that table came from.
The table was in the template.
Okay.
All I did was copy it over. I left off. So last year it had FY 22 and 23. I lopped off 22, left in 23 exactly as it was from last year. And then I used that same table, copied it over, and then I copied in from the local projects reports from the agencies, what they reported as revenues and expenses and net. Now, they didn't call it rollover when they were putting it in their charts. I'd have to go back in and look at exactly, because I had to do some math to get each of the numbers.
Well, between you guys and Elisa, I think there's a way to tighten this all up so it kind of comes together. So the numbers should be this, it should all work the same. So I'm not suggesting that we figure it out today, but I do have a comment that should tighten up.
I would also note that we're talking about two differences, because one is the carryover and one is the extra amount of money that we end up getting from.
Exactly.
And so somehow that should be noted.
Well, it should all tie together,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we should end up with their final budget. Granted, there might be an opening budget, but who cares, right? I mean, the final numbers is what counts, right? So, you know, what it's basically is what the carryover was from the prior year, what your final budget is, what you spent, and what the carryover is in the current year, right? And hopefully, hopefully our expenditures are now exceeding our revenues because we have a catch-up, you know, of prior amounts unspent in many circumstances. So I think it should all tie together based on final numbers would be my accountant's suggestion.
And that rollover number from last year, was that the difference between revenue and expense? Or was it the rollover number that you put in there?
So the rollover, if you go to your appendix A, because that should be the same as what it was in the prior year. So you have fiscal 23 actual revenues, fiscal 23 expenses, and the rollover is I would add the word cumulative. I was going to call it cumulative rollover at the end of 23, and at the end of 24, instead of saying net, I would also call it cumulative rollover. But it's basically, if you started on day one and you looked at all your revenues from day one each year and all your expenses from day one each year, that gets you your cumulative rollover as of the end of 24, right?
And is that what that number is in that column for FY23? That's a cumulative rollover?
Yes, it is, yeah, right. You can see that, for instance, if you look at San Rafael, their revenues are 939, their expenses are 283. I'll move that's right, 9876. And their rollover is 770. That doesn't crossfoot, right? Or City of Mill Valley, 239 was the revenues, 200 was the expenses. So, you know, that's basically 39,000, and their rollover is 110 because it's the cumulative number from the beginning of time. So that's what that schedule represents. That's how we set it up in the prior year. Does that make sense?
It makes sense now. That's not what the FY24 number is. The FY24 number is a net for that year. So I will go back in and make that overall correction.
Yeah, it should be the cumulative number. Yes, it should all be cumulative rollovers every year. That's what it should be.
Okay.
And that will tie to the financial report, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later today. Okay, cool. So that was my comments on page 2, I guess. Now we go to page 3. And if you look at Southern Marin Fire District, so you've got budget assigned to 707. And if you look at the last page, where is it? Southern, right? Yeah, so the 24 revenues show 292 versus 707. And then the 966 is the same. So there's something not working here, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's on our spreadsheets or the spreadsheets that.
I understand.
Right.
I'm not getting the answer. I just think that by the time we're finished, we should understand that. I would also note that it looks peculiar to me that the 23 revenues were 453 and the 24 revenues, sorry, the fiscal year 23 revenues are 453 and the fiscal 24 revenues are 292. That seems odd because it's just 20% of taxes and those are very stable numbers. So there's something wrong in here. And just, you know.
I don't know if that's spread.
Yeah, so go fix it. That's my suggestion. Get with your accountant and go fix it.
I don't know, what I'm
Right,
saying is
right.
that I don't know where that's the numbers for that spreadsheet came from. That's not one of our spreadsheets. That's my point.
Well, okay, so you guys go figure it out off. I'm not being critical. I just think that.
So that's one of those that Rebecca put in the numbers from the previous.
That's
year.
Rebecca, I'm not sure where these spreadsheets, these aren't our spreadsheets. And so I don't know where the numbers are coming from.
Okay, she said that they were. So let's just agree that you'll go off, you know, and straighten it out. Okay. So that's my comment on that page. Are there other comments on page 3? Moving on to page 4. I'm just curious on page 4, why you would have D-space inspection and evaluation for Kentfield in local. Shouldn't that be in D-space? That was a mistake that was in the prior year also we ran into, if I remember right.
I am guessing that
Yeah.
they took some of their local funds and said, let's spend these on D-space instead. Now, whether that's something that we like or allow or whatever, but I think that's my guess as to what's going on there.
So that also indicates that when we get to the D-space side, that they would have expended 100% of their D-space revenues?
Without,
Us,
Yeah, so this is incremental to D-space.
Yeah. Rebecca, is that correct?
It is correct. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, so that's fine. And it is their project name, so we don't want to change the project name like we already discussed. So I would use the word incremental, but you know, you might want to just maybe under .1 there, the project descriptions appear to adhere to the JPA agreement ordinance, and just maybe add an extra sentence that says that the D-space amounts included in local are an incremental amount of excess spending. Something like that. And then when we do our D-space side, we have to make sure that our numbers don't have a shortfall. So it looks goofy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I assume Kentfield would have spent 100% of their D-space money plus some more. So we need to correct, both of us look at that together.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that page? Moving on into the conclusion section. Recommendation 1. So to me, that struck me August 1st, just as a guy who knows how to close books, that struck to me as pretty quick. Rebecca, have you talked to staff? Is that reasonable for they knock it out in 30 days?
So Rebecca, when I saw this recommendation, we actually have in policy now for our disbursement policy that the member agencies will report by September 30. And that was, it was originally Marin Wildfire asked for August 31st. And then we put together a working group of the financial staff of our member agencies, and they requested that it be September 30th. So that's what we have in policy. And so
That sounds reasonable.
we do have a date set, Rebecca. So that's why I was scratching my head a little bit about the recommendation number 1, because we do have that set already.
I put it in sort of as an outrageous recommendation because of how we have discussed when we want to get our report out and knowing how long it takes for us to get the report out. In order for us to get a report out by the end of December, I do think we need to get it we need to get our spreadsheet by August, not December for sure. So if we're right now saying September 30th, that means that we will have a meeting at the end of October and start work at the end of October. We'll have one meeting in between when we really want to get the reports out. I'm not sure that's possible, but certainly better than how we're getting them now.
And let me ask a question. So having final numbers and doing our due diligence, because I've mentioned before, I was always hoping we get some of the work done during the fiscal year rather than after the fiscal year. So in our earlier dialogue, we were talking about how the budget stuff's a little confusing because it is based on a preliminary estimate of the numbers, but we still have those descriptions there. So I'm asking Rebecca, is it possible to do some of the work based on the budget numbers even before the end of the year? Even I'm hoping sometime we can start working in like March instead of waiting until, for June to be done with all three of these groups, right? And you kind of can do your, does it appear to be within the four corners of the agreement based on what we see preliminarily, and then the numbers of the last part, which would happen after the books are closed. So would that work, Rebecca, do you think?
Well, yes, and the no laughing, Pat.
I didn't know.
She said no laughing, Pat, because she says
okay.
yes and a lot when
Okay.
she and I are
I
conversing.
see. Okay, all right.
My version of but.
Okay.
Yes, it'll work. However, the only thing we're going to be able to put a stake in is the name of the project and the project description to say project seems to go along with what the JPA agreement and all that wording. The only thing we're going to be able to say is, yes, looks like the project meets the description of what it should be, great. Anything to do with the numbers, we could put the budget numbers in, but I will tell you that those might change as well if a project gets supplanted by another project.
Yeah, it is tricky because the other thing you want to focus on is, are we giving local money to one of our 17 jurisdictions and then having them say it's, we're doing this, and then we're basically paying someone's salary for other activities that they're performing, so it is difficult. I would say that, and I'll mention this again, I might as well just say it now. I believe if we were to rank, and this is consistent with what I wrote last year, if you rank the areas by risk, local has got the highest level of risk because you get 70 different organizations getting money landing on their laps, right? And therefore the risk of it going into other activities, I believe, is the highest. The middle one to me is D-Space because it's kind of an on-off switch, right? Either you're doing D-Space work or you're not. Hopefully it's a little easier to get comfortable there. And then the least risky of the three to me is core because there's so many eyes on core because that's where the big bucks are. That's just my reaction as someone who analyzed risk for a living when I was a CPA. So I agree this is kind of like one of the most important sections for us to work on as a community oversight committee. But I think there's a way to get ahead of it during the year and then after the books get closed, kind of wrap things up. So I guess going back to the specifics, we do have a recommendation here, and this is still within your committee, Rebecca. So I would like to think, well, if the policy does say 9:30, do we want to, you want to, if you still think this recommendation is
Oh,
strong,
no, I,
maybe we
I
should,
think August 1st is outrageous. And I did really mean to have a discussion about it. I didn't remember, and I should have, because I remembered the discussion about September 30th. If that's what's in there and we're comfortable with that, I'm fine with September 30th.
okay, and I still think there's a way we can work through our efforts as we get better and better. Everyone's getting better on both sides as we move along, right?
Exactly.
So I think there is, you can accomplish things before the end of the year to further accelerate our desire to get these reports out, you know. I mean, look, we were happy with a 1-year lag at one point, and now we're trying to get it down to, you know, a couple of months, which is great. We're all doing better. So I guess, would you drop recommendation 1 or say 9? What do you want to, why don't you think about what you want to do with that?
Well, so I'll ask Mark, if the agencies turned in, are they, when are they turning it in now? Not till December, right?
We got probably 75% of them by August 30th. Or, excuse me, September 30th.
Okay.
So here's my suggestion. Since September 30th is the policy, why don't you, Rebecca, go back and take a look with Mark at how many met that requirement? And to the extent that 2/3 met the requirement, you can make a finding that 1/3 didn't.
That's fair. And so I will assume that recommendation 1 is going to change somehow. Mark, I'll follow up with you, and
Okay.
between the two of us, we can figure out what that calendar would look like. And is it going to work if it's September 30th? If it will, great. And we'll just, the recommendation will be then something like you just said, John. And if September 30th won't work, then we'll, you know, make it something else.
All right. Theo, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to learning more about the committee, but I have another like commitment to get to, so I'll have to go for a bit, but I'll look for all the emails about onboarding and all that. So just wanted to thank you guys.
All right. Thank you, Theo.
Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you.
Good meeting you.
Okay, recommendation 2, any comments on that one? And staff, do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, I'm actually, this was another one I was scratching my head a little bit, Rebecca, because I'm going to stop this screen share and pull up a different screen share. Because we do have a standardized template that we ask the member agencies to fill out. So this is the email that goes to all of the member agencies, gives a step-by-step process of how to fill out the form, how to fill out the attestation, and then when they pull up the spreadsheet, each member agency gets the same spreadsheet to fill out. So I was struggling to understand this recommendation because we are giving them all a standardized spreadsheet.
Okay, then why don't you guys work it out offline. We don't have to work it out here. And then, you know, Rebecca, take a look at what you think, and when you give us a new draft, you can determine whether you want to keep it in or not, or Mark has convinced you that that's what you're doing now. The third recommendation?
And Rebecca, I sent exactly what you're asking for in recommendation 3. I sent it to the core group, but did I not send you a combined spreadsheet that has them all together?
Oh,
Well, I have it, so I can send it to you.
Okay, so
Okay.
why don't you guys work on that one offline also? Okay,
that's great.
good. All right. So good progress, and thanks a lot for getting it to us fairly quickly. So now we're going to move on to DSpace.
And I will pull it up.
I can't even read what I wrote.
So we were jamming trying to get this thing done. One of us was trying to get some football in on Sunday when we were finishing. I did say there was one capital T for that, but I don't have obviously any significant comments at this point, but I think that Pat and I will probably want to take one more read of it, you know, after the smoke settles.
And I did take one more read of it. today, but most of what I found was
Yeah,
wordsmithing.
yeah, okay.
I guess I would like to hear what those who were not working with us have to say.
Yeah, we have no comments, so that's kind of good news. We don't have any problems with the area. I mean, I think it's getting much tighter, and you know, we asked a lot of questions. We had, I don't know, 4 pages of questions, and you know, we asked to see stuff, and they showed us stuff, and our sense was that the level of diligence associated with these areas is reasonable, and it makes sense because they're kind of separate by themselves things, you know what I mean? So I'm a little puzzled by that Kenfield thing, but that'll be figured out later. So we're just going to go around. Do you have any comments? Larry?
No, I think it's well done.
Okay.
I really don't at this point.
Rebecca, do you have any questions or comments?
So, so you're not making any recommendations?
No, we're not. We you know, it's like this is year 4, I guess, right? And we're saying, good job.
I'll take it.
Well, it's our 3rd report, and
Or 3rd, whatever it is, yeah, okay.
yeah, and I think that's the issue anyway. So I'm just clarifying. Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, did we get that right? 23, 25, I got that right. Okay. Yeah, okay, all right.
And you know, again, I went over this and found, you know, I have lots of little hen scratches here.
Yeah, let's not get into it.
Yeah,
I don't want to waste.
I will get those all taken care of, and you and I can
Can
talk.
talk because we're on the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Jenny, do you have any observations you want to share?
Oh, it was nice to tag along with your team. It looks great. I wouldn't change anything.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's.
Yes, everybody, Jenny was on our team.
That's right. Okay.
Lightly.
So now that brings us to core. So core, yikes. So the problem with core is, of course, that Kingston's gone. Larry was turned out, and what's the other guy's name? Spencer. Yeah. So we're kind of at ground zero with regards to core, and we need to figure out an approach to get us through core. And just because we're kind of a ways into the game, I don't want to suggest that we do anything that's other than a complete review. I've talked to Mark about this a little bit, and this is the way I kind of think of it. As I described previously, from the risk perspective, a lot of eyes on this, right? I don't think we're going to find a problem with the Nevada fuel break, you know, unless we find out that all that money is being spent on fire trucks, that kind of thing, right? So we do have to do those levels of diligence, but it's a little different than local, where it just, who knows what they're doing with it. But we still have an obligation to get through this. So what we talked about when I did that little write-up last year, it was like read, review, and see if anything jumps out at you, was kind of the way we described what the effort was going to be. I guess there's maybe 50 projects altogether, right?
If you count and I'm going to do a screen share again, just to help us all have the same context. And that this is core only. And it is our project tracking spreadsheet. As Rebecca pointed out last year, this spreadsheet will have projects in here that are not in the work plan because we're tracking. It's a project that was in a previous work plan, but they're still closing out some of the spending. So it's about 50 different projects that are in here. Not all of them are in the work plan, but we have that designated. And what I thought, if you guys wanted to, we can go through this. And if there was anything that jumps out at you that says that would be a good project to look at, to use John's words, there's a lot of visibility on the Greater Nevada Shaded Fuel Break, and perhaps that is not one you want to look at, but perhaps one of the titles in here, that seems a little odd. Maybe that's one that we should look at.
So my suggestion about a way to move forward, because I don't think we want to do this today, because you want to have us all see this, to me, you can look at risk analysis, which is kind of what I used to do for a living, in a variety of ways, right? You could look at it by region, you can look at it by size. I would, and you know, what I would think is that the smaller the project is, the more likely that there could be a query from our perspective, because our role here, we're not supposed to second guess. And core is specifically approved by the board and by all those various committees, right? And we're not supposed to say, well, this would be a better thing to spend money on than that. That's not what our role is. Our role is to see it's inside the square. But just like local, to me, the smaller projects are the ones that might be going off the rail a little bit, right? Because our role for the voters is to say that this is a tight ship and that things aren't leaking out like things happen in large organizations and perhaps also in governments. I'm smirking when I say this. So, we could like ask at the next meeting to go bottoms up, right? Go from smallest projects to larger projects, and maybe just a sampling of the biggies, right?
Mhm.
In terms of just even a descriptive, if I was doing it, that's how I would do it. But there's 6 of us here, right? So that's one way we could fulfill our obligation here, is to look at, say, the lowest third of dollars and give us specifics on the lowest third of dollars. We could also look at another risk might be projects which are supposed to be done, but they're still hanging around, and maybe people are spending money on other stuff and saying it's for the project, those kinds of things. There's ways to look at it. I don't think we have to look at all 50 projects. I think that would be, given the eyes on it, the fact that all 50 projects are presented to the board, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you say 50 projects, is that 50 projects that were proposed in the work plan?
Everything that's on here was proposed. It may not have been in this fiscal
Okay,
year's work
but
plan.
that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Was it new in that work plan, or was it something that's left over from years past?
Yeah, and I'll use the evacuation ingress egress risk assessment. It's not in the 23-24 work plan, but it was a project that was made back in 22-23 that still is living, because there's still data analysis that we're doing with Sonoma technology.
Well, and this might be.
And that would vary from a project that was proposed and never accepted.
Yes, but if it were proposed in a previous year, it's had lots of eyes on it.
Mhm.
So perhaps, just the ones that were proposed that year,
That are smaller?
that, maybe combine those two approaches that are.
Yeah, because you could bifurcate it and say, okay, it could be a large project from a prior year which had big eyeballs on it, for which is just now dribbling out. That might have a different profile than a small project from the prior year that they didn't spend money on, and now they're using it as a candy jar.
And indirectly, there's another set of eyes that come into these projects, because each time a project is presented to the board, and CRELOC hosts a stakeholder meeting for the ecologically sound practices people and the FERN people and any other stakeholders. So we get together that Monday at noon before the Thursday board meeting to discuss the projects that are coming up. So you have that set of eyes
So you
too.
have the
looking.
ecological point of
Yeah,
view.
so you've got that, yeah. Fern really dives into these quite often.
So Larry, from your perspective, where would you spend your time how would you suggest we spend our time?
I don't know that I have a real strong recommendation one way or the other, John. I mean, what you're suggesting, the smaller projects, because the big projects have such, massive eyes on them already, it probably does make sense. And I don't think we're gonna find much variance, because as we're saying, these are.
Yeah, I don't expect to find any big whoas here, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, we still have to do it.
Right.
We have an obligation to the voter that we take a look, right?
We ought to look at what we did last year and.
So
Mix it
last
up a
year,
little.
who was on last year?
It was Rebecca, Kingston, and
Yeah.
Spencer.
Right. So Rebecca, last year, you guys read through everything?
Yep.
You read everything?
Yep.
Okay.
And there's also the fact that every project has been through the ATC committee and the ops committee.
Right.
And so, 17 times 2 eyeballs, 17,
Yeah.
all those numbers of eyeballs have seen them. And not every project gets discussed, but you can bet if there's controversy and it ends up being discussed, it's something that we should probably be thinking about looking at as well. But
Well, I would almost flip that over. If it's been controversial and been discussed in a heavy way, that means that we're not supposed to second guess. We're only supposed to find things that are really outside of the square, right? So as I recall last year, the biggest findings you had dealt with those demonstration projects, right? The garden demonstration.
yeah, that was a different reason, but yes.
But those were the only findings you had on core, right?
I don't remember that that's the only findings. It was a finding that we had, yes.
I think those might have been it can you quickly check our,
It was that and the mismatch of the number of projects that are in work
Oh.
plan and that are in
so the accounting was whacked out. Yeah, right,
that
exactly.
there were more projects in the project tracking sheet than there were in the work plan, which is from the legacy projects from previous years.
So what do we think is our most productive thing to do at our next meeting? Because I'd love to get through this at our next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we have to do a good job. So I'm not saying we must rush. We want to get it right, but what do we think is the best way to use our time? Would you want to just do the lowest third?
Yeah, and I would love to see us have a draft at the next meeting, not just picking out projects at the next meeting.
Oh yeah, we would want to have everything in
Yeah,
advance, right?
yeah.
You already have you have the full core list of every project,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Right, so we can get that in advance. You can give it to us tomorrow, I assume, right?
So,
Give it to you today.
I have a dinner party.
Well, cancel it.
When you're-
You're gonna have work to do.
Yeah, I'll tell my wife it's her birthday.
Oh.
When you're saying get it to us, what do you mean? Is there a committee that's working on this?
Well, that's a good point. I think because the committee blew up, our choice is to either create a new committee, which means some of us do double duty, or we just try to do it all together and just be done with it. I was
Okay,
thinking
now if you're saying get it to us, that means we all have to be together doing that, right? We can't,
No, I mean, I'm referring to you review it on your own and then we meet.
On
And then
the-
see it.
On the
that
26th,
won't-
right?
Yeah,
February 26th.
but that's doing it. The Brown committee says the public will have not seen what we're gonna go work on. I don't think that works. We have to be together.
No, if you guys are working individually and you come to, and the only time that you guys, what you wouldn't be able to do is talk to each other
exactly. No one talks to
about
each
that
other.
before the meeting.
Right.
And if we're gonna get something to work on, doesn't that have to be presented before we work on it?
First off, it's already public, right?
Yeah, this is all public information.
It's already on your webpage, right?
Okay, so we're just gonna go look at the portal and say, here's what we're gonna discuss.
So I believe the portal is not organized. Is it already organized by core, local, and
It's
space?
It has to work.
in each zone, yes.
Okay, then what you're doing is just taking that and cutting all the other parts out and just giving us a,
No, what I was recommending, I send you the project tracking spreadsheet that just has the core projects.
right, so,
And then you can use that as your reference to go back into the work plan that's online to see what you want to work on.
so is that document that you're gonna give us already available to the public?
Anyone who asks for it.
Rebecca says no. Okay, but it's just a cut of the data.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an offense to take just a single cut of the data and give it to us that anybody could see all of it. It's already all there. It's just getting all the other stuff off the page, so there's no, without the noise. And if you just order it from large to small by zone, that's just, stuff that's already available. So all that's just data. I don't think there's any Brown Act problem with.
No, and then the spreadsheet I'll be sending to you was reviewed by the finance committee and then the board when we closed out the fiscal year.
In this form?
Yeah.
So that's already public. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's already there in the
Okay.
finance committee minutes would have those items, right? Okay, we're talking on each other, so that's fine, right?
So once Mark sends this information, which is a spreadsheet, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that a spreadsheet? Then what do we each individually do with it?
So I assume, and you helped me do this because I never try to get into this detail.
Yeah.
I assume that you'd be able to click on that spreadsheet and that would take you to the project description somewhere
You
else.
wouldn't be able to click on it. You would need to go to the work plan and find it in the work plan.
And you'll give us a little tutorial for those of us who don't get into this level of detail, because I
Go to the
assume
table of
Pat
con-
already knows that.
Go to the table of contents and click on.
Okay, well, are they numbered somehow so I can find the damn things? I would,
Well,
Yes.
they're batched by zone. So if you want to look into the Nevada project, you go to the Nevada zone and you'll see the project proposals.
okay, so your spreadsheet, just to be clear, the spreadsheet's gonna have just a title on it?
Mhm.
It's gonna have a number?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can go to Nevada, I can find that number.
The project numbers are not in the work plan. The project title is in the work plan.
So I can find it easily?
Yes.
Okay, I take your word for it. So then what we just want to do is, if we agree that we're going to concentrate on the lowest third by dollars, you could give us that,
Sure.
right? And that's just taking the public data and cutting it, which to me is, anybody could do that just by using, you know.
The only thing we have to be careful of, because we're only 6, is that I think we can only have a committee of 3 if we were to meet outside of the.
We're not
regular
gonna,
meeting.
no, we're trying to do this, that's my.
Without, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, if it
Correct.
comes to that, we could only have 3 at this point because.
Right,
full
exactly.
quorum.
Right, exactly. That's the whole. We either pick 3 of us to do this because the others have all evaporated. That means each of the 3 of us would have to take on our own. We'd have to do 2 separate subcommittees, and we want to make sure we're not the
Right,
same people, right? Or we just try to say, let's just power through it in one meeting with Mark walking us quickly, or walking us, you know, at an appropriate level of speed through each of the ones, and if we have any questions, we have questions, and we're done with it.
I would say that.
John, I favor that approach for whatever it's worth. I like the idea of powering through.
So let me clarify the spreadsheet you want from me. You want the spreadsheet with all the projects, or do you want the spreadsheet with the lowest 1/3 dollar amount?
Lowest $1/3.
Sounds good.
So that'd be roughly 20 projects,
Roughly.
roughly. I mean, you know,
And when we write this up, we are going to explain our rationale. for
just like
doing
we
it the
did
way-
here, like
Yeah.
we did here,
Yeah.
right? We just said, and both of us did it, right? I mean, Rebecca said, okay, we looked at this for everybody, and then we looked for 5, and I think, by the way, I don't know if you said it, but you should say 5 different than the last time. Rebecca? You
I
probably
don't-
want-
If I said it, that is what we did.
You did say it, I couldn't remember, yeah, okay, fine, right, so we're just kind of telling the public basically what we did, because in these cases, we're gonna either say, we looked and we had a bunch of questions and everything was okay, right, we have no findings. And we don't have to, I don't think you have to tell the public every single step of every single thing you did, that's, you know, you're not giving us essentially what I call our work papers, it's rather,
Yeah,
here's a picture of what we did, so in this area, we would describe how we did it. We decided this year that, given the fact there's a million eyes on it, including the ecological eyes, that we felt this was a good way to zone in on things that might be problematic, and we might do it again the next year in a different way.
Or the next year, we could look at all the biggest projects.
Yeah, exactly,
Oh,
right, or the
are
new projects, or whatever,
right.
or the ones that
we-
are most over budget, you know, whatever.
Rebecca's trying to say something.
Are we gonna do anything in this year's, in the report that we are now writing about the recommendations from last year? Are we gonna say, yes, all of this was taken care of?
I was trying to remember, did we do that last year? I think we did it too.
We did
Yeah.
it last year.
So we should, each of our subcommittees should do that again this year.
And we've got Mark went over this in
Right.
a board meeting. And for the most part agreed with us, but disagreed on a few things.
Well, in a couple of cases was this, and which, the never-ending discussion of the Rangers, I don't know where that stands right now.
The presentation for the board is on February.
Okay,
I would say that in respect to the recommendation about the gardens, that I would have a follow-up to that recommendation. So I didn't know whether we wanted to put it into core or put it into follow-up on recommendations. Should our follow-up on the recommendations be by core, local, and DSpace,
I think so.
or all together at the end?
Well, that's a writing thing. The writing thing, I don't, whatever.
I think it's better if we keep the recommendations separated, because it's easier for people to track from year to year what they were. Otherwise, you're cross-referencing. If they're all listed at the back, people are sort of trying to map them back.
I would agree, just for simplification
Sure.
of putting the whole thing together.
I'm ambivalent, so that sounds good to me.
So then for the core recommendations from last year, the core team from this year would have been following up on those, or would it be the people who wrote the core last year?
Well, I think it would be this year's core team, although that's all of us, right? Because otherwise you're going to start crossing your subcommittees and, you know, could be a problem, right? So in other words, I was on local last time. So if all of a sudden I'm reaching back out to the current people, you know, I think you have a problem with getting a quorum there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would think you just, that this year's teams in each of the categories, because you only have two categories now, right? We have DSpace and we have local, because course kind of fell apart. So I think this year's DSpace team should follow up on last year's DSpace comments, and this year's local team should follow up on last year's local comments. And then as far as core is concerned, we should all collectively follow up on them when we next meet.
So then for next, all of us will be looking at the lowest third and reviewing those and making our recommendations, comments, whatever we're going to do about that. And we will also be looking at last year's core recommendations and deciding if we need to do any follow-up on them.
Correct. I think Mark can probably just present to us what he did, and then we can, at the meeting, decide how we feel about it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
That's good though. Thanks for staying on, keeping us on the straight and narrow Brown Act road there.
And so now what are we going to do as a product of what we're going to do? So we're all going to go look at all of the recommendations. We're all going to go look at the spreadsheet of, and what are we going to then bring back to the next meeting? Pat had said she wanted to see a draft, and yet maybe not.
So we're gonna actually do our examination at the next meeting, and then based on what our examination results are, we'll conclude as to how we write it up.
Okay, so individually then, we are just coming up with what we as an individual
Have questions about, yeah.
have questions about, think we ought to work on, whatever, so that when we have our discussion next time, we can bring it up.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we in our agenda?
You are at information items number 10A.
Okay.
And you guys were asking about the status report of member agency disbursement. So we held back checks to 3 agencies: Centerville, Marin County, and Fairfax. Centerville, just because we hadn't received an attestation from them yet. Still working on that. Marin County Fire hasn't been able to close out the books because of DSpace being a calendar year versus fiscal year and closing that out. So they know they're working on that. And then Fairfax hadn't turned their stuff in. So those payments hadn't moved down.
So that information should tie into findings we had last year in each of our 2 subcommittees, and therefore when whoever is doing the follow-up from the prior year can note you've seen evidence that you guys are dropping the hammer now.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
And then the FY 23-24 financial report, that is that first page of the financial that you guys had that originally Larry Chu was writing. Last year, we transitioned it to Elisa providing the data, and she actually sent it to me yesterday, so I'll be able to include it into the packet for next meeting.
And that should also help Rebecca from the perspective of her attachment, because that should be, right, the same as, that should be a cumulative roll forward document. That make sense, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, does any committee member have a request for a future agenda item?
I probably do, but I've forgotten what it is.
You can only send it later.
How about reviewing core?
What?
Reviewing core.
Yep. Reviewing the core.
Oh, yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. Okay, and therefore this brings me to item number 12.
Adjournment.
Adjourn. Are we ready to adjourn? All right, see y'all.
See you, everybody.
Bye.